We have a few more people straggling, but I think we'll get started. We have a quorum. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming out this afternoon and for your ongoing support of our Islands Museum. Our first order of business to open up this 2016, 2015, no, 20, 20
Some year.
the 2016 annual meeting is to approve the minutes of the 2015 annual meeting. Do I get a motion to approve those minutes?
60.
20,
60.
no. It's 2016 and the annual meeting for 2015, which was last summer.
We met here.
See, we just want to know if you were paying attention.
Right.
Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Sure.
Of 20? Okay, we've just set the tone for the meeting. All in favor? Thank you.
That's right. Woo! Rock and roll.
As you look around us today, I think we can easily sum up in one word where we've been over the past year, and certainly the past 6 months in addition to the 2016. Transformative is the word I'm going to use. What a sight this is right now. At these annual meetings, it is always difficult to separate 2016 because we're already well into 6 months of 2017 and well into our summer, the dog days of summer. But I will say that there's probably more going on at this museum than any time in the history of this museum. It's really exciting. Another word to describe where we are could be pivotal. We're defining, and in 2016, certainly we're defining our museum's future as it becomes a renowned cultural center for this island. In 2016, we really began our metamorphosis with new leadership, a new vision, a new logo, new branding, and fresh marketing. Our vision now to inspire all people to discover, explore, and strengthen their connections to this island and its diverse heritage. And guess what? It is resonating. We've reached out to all communities on this island and beyond to involve them in what we're doing and let them discover what this organization can do for this island and for all its visitors, and really create a true pride of place. Through our discussions, our programs, exhibits, and education, the public has responded very, very well. No longer is our wonderful museum going to be just about curating objects and a wonderful collection, but in addition, a true call for engagement and involvement, for meaningful connection to the community. Here on this hill, with this wonderful location, we have an opportunity to do that. Our executive director, Phil Wallace, thank you, new in 2016, has infused new energy into the heart of the museum and has invigorated an incredibly, and I will say incredibly motivated staff that's passionate and talented. And he's inspired them to think forwardly and creatively and innovatively about what we need to do to fulfill our mission. I will say the staff's been working double time as we expand our ongoing daily activities and also carefully chart out our future. Can I ask the staff members please to stand up and get a round of applause for all they're doing? Thank you. Again, it has not been business as usual. And of course, it's not possible without the support of our board, our volunteers, our members, and our generous donors. Thank you. So as we move through our agenda today, you'll hear from Phil more about the state of our museum and all the various things that we were doing. There are just a few things going on. Dale Garth our treasurer will give you snapshots of our financials. And I will say we have never had such detailed, sophisticated financials in the history of our museum. Thank you, Dale. Your efforts are tireless, 7 days a week, and we really do appreciate that. Needless to say, our capital campaign is in full gear. And with our goal to complete this first phase of the project. At the end of 2016, we raised approximately $15 million. That number today is somewhere around $20 million. So suffice to say, we are 2/3 of the way there, and we are working hard to get this last sprint in, if you will. But what it has done is it's allowed us to begin our project. And as Dale goes through our numbers, we are confident that we can move through the various phases of this project. Behind you, just in this past week, we have taken down the 1938 building. More of an undertaking than any of us ever knew, with all the abatement that was required to take down that building. I will say it was a well-built building. If you were able to witness Matt Mary of Keene Construction taking a giant, whatever it was, claw with a rock as big as the middle section of this group and dropping it on a cement floor to try to break it open to get that building down. It was really something. Marcia Sini will be giving us a governance report. Marcia will talk to you about herself and a few others who are terming out this week, and others who will be joining the board. I have tremendous gratitude to Marcia and to her husband Bill for all that you've done for this museum and me personally and your generosity. Thank you both so much.
Anytime.
I am assured that all those that are terming out will not leave our family and their passion for the museum and support. Thank you. David LeBreton, who's hiding in the back somewhere over there, will be assuming Marcia's role as our new chair of the governance committee. Thanks, David, for taking that on. And at the end of our program today, Phil is going to award the Martha's Vineyard Medal to 3 distinguished and deserving recipients, as you will find in our program. So there you have it. We're on the move, so let's move on. It's a very, very exciting time for this museum and for all of you to be involved. And I expect this tent is going to get as big as our evening of discovery tent by the time we're done with this project. Anyway, Phil, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Stever. My role actually is to briefly go over 2016, but I want you to know that in your annual report, there's a full write-up of how much we've been doing. And I will tell you the biggest challenge was to figure out how, under the instructions of Katie Fuller, to get that all into 2 pages under penalty of death. So I'm here to tell you I did it. So I'm going to quickly review that, and I'm going to bring you a little bit up to speed in each of the categories that are important: history and heritage, life learning and education, and visitor experience. Those are 3 defining elements that are driving the transformative model that Stever was talking about. There are 3 other words that we're using a lot now. Pivotal clearly is one. Stever noted that, and transformative. The first that I'm going to state is access for all. What does access for all mean? I will give a nod to the island we don't talk about, Nantucket. Oh, I mentioned it. Nantucket, we took board and staff over there, and we learned a great deal about access relative to economics. How much does it cost to go? Their price point is quite high. We want to keep ours very low so that everyone, people on the island, off island, can afford to learn and to grow. Language is particularly significant on this island. Nearly 1 in 5 individuals are Brazilian or Portuguese related and have Portuguese as a fundamental language. How do we deal with that on this island so that learning can be accessible to all? Geographic. If one lives in Chilmark, I still don't think you go to Edgartown, but I could take a quick survey. Teasing, but we have 6 different towns that are very, very different from each other and are very proud about their history and heritage, rightfully so. Our goal is to tell that story for all the people, all the places. So access through and by geography. And last is physical. And when I say physical, I do mean those who are physically impaired, but I also mean those that do not have all their senses or sensibilities. And I speak in reference Chilmark, where years back, 1 in 6 residents had no auditory ability. They were deaf, and it was a signing community. That's part of our history and heritage. How do we honor that as we move forward? So access, so keep that in mind as we move forward in 2017 and beyond. Second, commitment to all. Commitment to our diverse heritage, every culture, every people, every place on this island. Vitally important to everyone on the board and staff, and I suspect everyone here. For instance, tomorrow evening, the History Makers will be celebrating their annual gathering. The History Makers are the most celebrated Black Americans in the United States that come together to share their stories. And they're going to be conducting 37 of those very same stories in the coming weeks. Converting that oral and visual history, with Lindsay Lee does on our staff, is vitally important to us as Americans. How do we reflect this diverse heritage of all the heritage, from Wampanoag to Black to white to Portuguese to Brazilian to Serbian? Where's Anna? The Local Immigrants exhibit. If you haven't seen the local exhibit, Local Immigrants, please do, because it's our newest wave of who we are. And lastly, third, that history is to be about us all and a learning experience for us all. History is not just about my history, I own it. It's my history, sharing it with others so that we all can become one humanity, really. And all 3 of those are very, very important to who we are. Briefly, I will just say, and you're going to see this in your report, education. Where's Anne? Hello, Anne. Anne Ducharme, who's our Director of Education, has worked tirelessly to inject education as a critical part of our business model. And indeed, she has succeeded tremendously. This year, when you look at your annual report, this year we are now up to roughly 2/3 of every child on the island who gets touched by culture of the island through our staff. She has finished now the strategic plan that includes science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And for those of you who are education geeks, that is the core that's driving our educational experience here in America. Anne and her team have grabbed onto it and run with it. One of the most fun for me is that Anne and Beth decided to take the heath hen. And some of you know I'm an Audubonner, a birder, and that was a bird that became extinct on this island. And Anne tried to figure out how she could take that during Discovery Days, Anne? And create a core curriculum out of there. It mushroomed into a 13 to 15 class curriculum that was actually talked about at our evening of discovery. It was so defining for that family, the Deer Walkers, about their 8-year-old child learning a sense of place, pride of place, and care of place. And that's who we are on this island. So thank you, Anne, for doing that. Really. In our exhibits, curatorial, and all things fun in-house in Edgartown, I sort of bumped into Anna, then Carringer, now Barber, around the remake, which I was like, how did this happen? And between Stina Sayre and Anna, they created a remodeling of, I think it was 5 different pieces of clothing or hats into modern day pieces to tell the story of where we were years ago and where we are now. And it brought in, I'd say our age dropped about 30 years in terms of who visited the museum. So we learned a lot about who we attract and how we attract, and that was very, very cool. The other very cool part was our commitment to interpreting, I'll say, Black American culture in many different ways on the island. And Skip Finley, who I don't think is here because he's running around doing many, many different things, but Skip helped us in many ways think through how we touch the sort of heart, souls, and history of Black Americans on the island. And indeed, in the middle of that, he's written a book. And if you don't know it, he's completed it and he's found a publisher. So yay, Skip, that was really huge. 63 non-white whaling captains here from Martha's Vineyard. And that has continued and indeed is reflective of why the history makers are coming here for their annual conference this summer. The last I'm going to mention is just one of my favorites. Who here knows the megalodon? Who knows what a megalodon is? We got, yeah, Chris for sure. Yeah, we got a couple out there. Well, this is, take this tent, a great white shark about the size of this tent, okay? They ate whales for lunch, okay? They used to swim over this island, and we were given a 5.5-inch fossilized megalodon tooth, and I had no idea what I was looking at. So I got quite an education, Chris, as to what a megalodon was. But that scale of history, and I think you all know I'm a nature guy, is very important to what staff's trying to figure out in the coming years. How do we attract people to life learning through scale? And that megalodon will be a featured part of what we do. So in closing, I'll just reiterate what Stever said. Yes, we are on the move, not only in terms of construction project, not only in terms of our fundraising being 2/3 of the way there, and your support and people you know who might want to support is vitally important to us now. But it's also, we're on the move in terms of how we think and how we reflect this wonderful culture of this island, who we are and what matters. Thank you. I'm going to introduce the Dale Garth to go over finances. Thank you, Dale.
This will be a little less interesting than megalodons, but here we go. In 2016, the museum took a number of important financial steps. Here? Turn it up. We took a number of important financial steps to help along the strategic transformation that Steve and Phil mentioned, and this momentum has continued through the middle of 2017. Before discussing those steps, I want to briefly mention the museum operations for the year. Revenue from operating activities and programming showed strong growth, and expenses were generally as planned. In our campaign expenses, there was one area to note, and there was a significant expense that we took on for advertising, event, and public relations support as the campaign moved from the quiet phase to the more public phase starting last June. And with the support of our combined fundraising efforts, we did achieve a surplus of almost $14,000 for the year. We rarely have big surpluses, or we're happy to make a plus sign. The comprehensive capital campaign to support the museum's strategic plan advanced strongly in 2016. Some of you have heard this before, but it's important to say when we talk about a comprehensive campaign, it includes funding targets to take care of a variety of needs. One, the funds to purchase, develop, and relocate to the Marine Hospital site. Two, funds to support operations and transition costs during these years leading up to the relocation. And three, funds to build an endowment as a source of operational funding for future years. And also, we continued in 2016, which we've done for the last several years, to combine our annual fundraising efforts with the comprehensive campaign. So it just makes the conversation with our potential donors a little more straightforward. As Steve mentioned, during 2016, we raised $3.1 million in cash and pledges, brought the campaign to a total of $15 million, and also, as they mentioned, with fundraising the first half of the year and an agreement to sell one parcel of the Edgartown property, we've reached almost $20 million. With this fundraising success, in late 2015, the museum made the decision to move forward with the more detailed architectural planning, which had been on hold for a while. This committed the museum to a certain level of building-related spending through 2016 and now on into 2017, primarily for architect and engineering fees. As this planning progressed, in late summer of 2016, the museum went through a process to select a contractor and retain this contractor for a pre-construction role starting last August. And finally, after many twists and turns, some unexpected developments, some cost increases, some timing delays, the demolition and preparation are underway, which you can see behind you, and we hope to start construction in late September, early October. And one of the important steps in managing this construction process was to arrange a line of credit to help bridge the difference in timing for the funds needed for the construction costs, which will all come in through 2018, and the receipt of funds from our pledges and new fundraising commitments, which will come in through 2020. To meet this need, the museum has secured a $6 million line of credit through Cape Cod 5. It is for a 5-year term at a favorable fixed interest rate. It is important to note that we do not have to borrow under this line, but it is available to us if it would be helpful for us to do so. Another important financial step is to continue to build the museum's endowment to help fund future operations. By meeting the match requirement for the National Endowment for the Humanities grant and making additional contributions, the endowment reached $1.2 million by the end of 2016 and is up to $1.4 million by mid-2017. The endowment is currently invested in a low-cost balanced portfolio managed by Vanguard. A final point to note: as we look forward to the museum's financial operations when the transformation is more fully realized, a key objective is to improve the museum's opportunity to have year-in and year-out financial sustainability. This will be accomplished by having a much greater proportion of expenses covered by revenue from operations, as well as by utilizing the earnings from the endowment to support operations. Together, these should make the museum much less reliant on the annual fundraising effort. This is an important element of the museum's business model as it relocates to this new campus. Our challenge is to meet both day-to-day needs and accomplish any strategic objectives. Our strategic objectives are great. Over the years, we've received support from many members, patrons, board, volunteers, staff. With all of us continuing to work together, we believe we can be successful. Many thanks for all of your help. I guess, can we ask questions now on financial stuff? We'll do that later.
Yeah, why don't we get to Marcia?
Okay.
And we'll do questions on everything.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, I can hear me. This is my favorite part of the program, not because I like public speaking, which I don't, but it's great to follow Dale. But it's because you guys have to do some actual work. So that's important to me. And what you're going to hear is a whole lot of names. But I want to thank first my very hardworking governance committee, Bob Lacklow, who's here, and Steve Aubrey, who's up here, and new members Chris Murphy and Barbara Lean are wonderful board members. But I think the prize goes to David LeBreton, who's agreed to take over my role because I'm terming out and be the chairman next year. And I hope you've looked at the list and see how many board members are expiring next year. Yeah, like lots. I take credit for that, but I'm leaving it to you. That's great. So I thank them, and what I'd like to do is thank myself and Jamie Curtis, Jim Richardson, who's here, and who's fortunately going to get a medal, so you can hang on for that. And Betsy Weinstock, I don't see because she had to speak at the Writers' Forum this morning, and she's probably tired. But I really want to thank all of those people for their unfailing dedication to the goal. And as Dale said, it's been a bumpy road, and it's very expensive. And the longer we wait, well, You can understand that. We got to get going, and we're doing it. So watch out. Now, oh, Barbara, you didn't hear me. I was thanking you for joining the governance committee. She's here, and Chris too. You're here, and I really appreciate those new members more than you will ever know. Now, what I've got for you is a list of first-term new board members and the 3 people who are coming back. So what I'd like to do is, in reverse order, I'd like to do the 3 who are coming back, because it's Elizabeth Bime, Julie Flanders, who's here, and Chris Murphy, who's also here. And what I'm seeking from you is a nomination for the whole slate, and then a second.
Nominate.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, that's great. So, all in favor? Aye. No? Abstain? Congratulations. You get to be a glutton for punishment and do it again. Now, I guess I better not say too much because the first year board members don't even know what they're getting in for. But I tried to be, and Paul knows, Paul Schneider knows, he's here. I'll make them all stand up now. Yeah. So, Juliana Rogers, I know you're here. You can stand up now. Kathy Weiss, you can stand up now. I told you I was going to embarrass you. I said to Kathy, not too long ago, I said, I made my first mistake when I went to law school, so I have to do this. And my second mistake was not meeting her sooner. She's really a spitfire, and I'm very happy to have her. David Foster, I don't see. Jeb Lapp. John McDonald. Phil Regan. Yeah, I saw you. And I'm personally invested in Phil's participation in the board. And I'm very glad that we finally lasted long enough for your kids to graduate and go wherever they've gone to.
Graduated yet.
Oh, well, whatever. But you're not coaching Little League anymore. Well, whatever it is, you've got time for us. And then Nat Benjamin is coming back. So he'll be a first-termer, but he's familiar to all of us, and we know him very well. What I'd like to do is accept a nomination for this whole slate.
Second.
Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
No? Abstain? Congratulations, kids. You're in for it. And I said I'm very grateful to my governance committee for getting us to this day, because that's a long list. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. I'm going to open it up for questions, but I do have to say that the old Sculpin artists are out there painting for us all, and we'll never miss an opportunity to do a little fundraising. So if you'd like to purchase one of their paintings, part of those proceeds will be going to help finish this building here. So, and you're welcome to go look and see what they're doing. Questions, please. It's a busy time. Anybody like to questions or comments?
Where do we stand on the Fresnel lens and getting that prepared, funding and timing?
The question is, where do we stand on the Fresnel lens? You can if you like. I'm happy to do it. Go ahead.
We've been awarded a grant from the national, from the IMLS, the Institute for Museum and Library Sciences, to have the lens conserved and moved and reinstalled. And it's a 50-50 matching grant. Our portion, or the portion that they are awarding, is $150,000. A very expensive project for a very important object. And it's going to begin possibly this fall, but it's going to end shortly before we open because the object cannot be in the building when it's under construction. So it's going to be one of the last things that we do.
The new home for the Fresnel lens will be here, right behind you, in this corner of the building, which I think is a glass pavilion that we've all seen renderings of at this point. But I think it's going to be one of the most exciting features beyond the 1895 building here on the property. Other questions? Comments? All right. Thank you. Anything else, Katie, that we need to cover? We're good. I got 2 thumbs up. Thanks very much, everybody, for coming.
We're going to do it tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to move to the fun. So,
That wasn't fun?
well, all right. It was fun. More fun. We're going to move now to the Medals Award, and I want to just read it very briefly. I have not memorized this, but I think it's exceptional, and there are 3 exceptional people who are receiving it. The Martha's Vineyard Medal. As the premier storyteller of the history, arts, and culture of Martha's Vineyard, the Martha's Vineyard Museum created the Martha's Vineyard Medal in 2009. The medal is awarded to leaders in the community to recognize their outstanding commitment to preserving the history, arts, and culture of Martha's Vineyard. Recipients demonstrate leadership on Martha's Vineyard in at least one of the following areas: historic preservation, fine and performing arts, literature, community activism, and education. This year's recipients, and I'm going to ask the presenter and the recipient to come up. So Ann and Kate, that would be you. First, Kate Hancock, Jim Richardson, and Chris Scott. And we'll do them in that order. So if Kate Hancock, you would come up. Yes, you have to come up here. You just do. She doesn't like this. It's okay. I know. And Ann, come on up. So I'm going to turn this over to my other buddy, Ann, and I'll let you do your math.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Ann Smith, and I'm the Executive Director of Featherstone Center for the Arts, and I am delighted to be talking a little bit about Kate Hancock. I first met Kate in 2010 at a memorial service for Jerry McCarthy. Jerry had served as board president of the Friends of Sedgwick-and-Tackett, and Kate, a Friends of Sedgwick-and-Tackett board member, was staffing the dessert table. I watched as Kate fastidiously replenished the quickly disappearing refreshments, all in a quiet, elegant manner. I observed her for quite some time, and it was very clear that she relished being behind the scenes, flawlessly executing her duties, but not wanting to bring attention to herself. I immediately respected her distinctive grace, and when Jean McCarthy, Jerry's wife and a fellow Featherstone board member, leaned over and remarked that Kate would be a perfect board member and volunteer for Featherstone, I agreed wholeheartedly. Kate is not afraid to roll up her sleeves and get the job done. Kate did become a Featherstone board member and an extraordinary volunteer, especially in helping to hang our numerous gallery shows, more than 15 shows in a year. And when it was time to see candidates for a newly created gallery manager position, I had no qualms about asking Kate to step down from the board, where she was my boss, and consider the position of working with me. And I am thrilled to say it has been one of the best decisions to have Kate Hancock as a colleague and a dear friend. And oh, by the way, Kate now hangs more than 30 art shows a year. So while quiet and unassuming at first, Kate is a one-woman show, a real-life encyclopedia of all things theater, literature, and show tunes. She brings art and history to life. And now in her latest book, The Roses on the Wallpaper, she'll be embarrassed that I'm giving her shameless plugs, but I want to make sure that you all know that. She even brings flowers to life. Kate is a living historical legend. She has grown up spending her summers here on Martha's Vineyard since childhood. She lives in the home that once belonged to her grandparents and parents. East Chop serves as the setting in her first young reader's book, Windswept, which is a must-read for all. Yes, I do have that one too. There you go. Props are always important. You'll know why in a minute. Kate has spent countless hours above Kroenig's grocery store managing the inventory of costumes and props for the Martha's Vineyard Playhouse. Can you imagine what that must be like?
Oh my God.
And in fact, Kate has had multiple roles at the Vineyard Playhouse, from theater manager, production manager, and as their first gallery manager in the new lobby space. She has continued the fourth grade theater project at the Oak Bluff School and serves as theater stage manager for the Martha's Vineyard Regional High School musical theater productions. And now, in addition to her art duties at Featherstone, Kate serves as a faithful docent for the Martha's Vineyard Museum. She can capture the attention of children as well as seniors with her wicked sense of humor, dramatic flair, and boundless energy. And I know that Anne Ducharme joins me and agrees that she is a true asset to your docent program. So for a woman who shuns the limelight, but who deservedly belongs in it, I thought it was only appropriate, I do not sing, but I thought I would read the words of Louis Armstrong. Well, hello, Kate. It's so nice to have you here where you belong. You're looking swell, Kate. I can tell, Kate, you're still glowing, you're still crowing, you're still growing strong. Promise you'll never go away. I am honored and delighted to introduce and congratulate Kate Hancock. Now what do we do?
Would you like to say just a few words? Just a few words.
I made the mistake of looking in the program and seeing the list of people who have had this honor, which sort of reinforced for me that I really don't know what I'm doing up here, but I am beyond speechless. I feel that I've had this opportunity to explore my passions on this island and in this community. And I only do things that give me joy. And I thank Anne Ducharme, Ann Smith and MJ and all the people who have given me those opportunities, and I hope I can pass it on to somebody else. So thank you very much.
This is the medal awarded to Kate Hancock in recognition of her commitment to preserving island history, art, and culture. Thank you from all of us and the island.
Thank you, Ann. Oh, I don't want to take you down.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Okay, Bonnie Stacy and Jim Richardson. Jim, who are you? Oh, come on. You've got to get up here too. There we go. Here we go. Yeah, come on up. And I'll turn it over to Bonnie. I will tell you, I've really gotten to know this guy and had no idea he'd been on the board for some 40 years. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Bonnie, and thank you, Jim.
Hi. So Jim Richardson's connection to Martha's Vineyard spans generations. His family has been coming here summers his whole life. His family's been coming here since the 1840s, and he has been coming here summers his whole life. His great-grandfather, Captain William Bennett Lawton, built the first wooden campground cottage.
Get up closer. Get up closer to her. Get up. Don't be shy. She's a nice lady. Get close to her. Thank you.
Take a better picture.
Now the family has migrated to East Chop, but they do not seem to have strayed from Oak Bluffs. Jim's knowledge of the vineyard goes back even farther. It's based on his study of the island's archaeology and on his insatiable curiosity about everything Martha's Vineyard. Whether it's excavating an ancient woodland era site, tracing the path of Nathan Smith during the French and Indian War using the evidence engraved on a powder horn, studying the fate of vineyard whale ships during the Civil War, or researching, along with Dick Burt, the colonial archaeological site of John and Experience Mayhew, Jim is on the case. And Jim Richardson is truly a museum person. Attuned to the resonance that objects have, their ability to capture the imagination with an immediacy that cannot be accomplished in writing, he combines deep scholarship with unrelenting enthusiasm. And about that scholarship, Jim is Curator Emeritus of Anthropology at the Carnegie Museum of Natural History and Professor Emeritus of Anthropology at the University of Pittsburgh. Jim has written books and numerous articles, taught courses, and curated many exhibitions. His research interests range from archaeology of the Central Andes to climate change and cultural adaptations worldwide, to maritime adaptations, to the impact of natural disasters on cultural development, to transoceanic pre-Columbian contact, to El Nino. Closer to us on Martha's Vineyard, he has researched and participated extensively in the archaeology of northeastern North America, including, of course, this island. I've known Jim since I started at the museum 7 years ago, but his connection to us goes back much further, decades. Jim first met the Martha's Museum when it was the Dukes County Historical Society. He was only about 10 years old, and he visited with his mother. The curator was Franklin Norton, who showed them the museum's collection and also his own historical collections. Jim was hooked, and as he returned to the island summer after summer, the museum slowly became part of his life. At the same time, his interest in archaeology grew into his profession. While still a teenager, he dug with Gail Huntington near the lagoon. Huntington's 1959 report of that excavation made up the entirety of the second issue of the museum's journal, the Dukes County Intelligencer. As a graduate student at Syracuse University, he dug with William Ritchie and noted the similarity of La Mocha points to examples found here on the vineyard, thus introducing Ritchie to Martha's Vineyard. Ritchie would go on to excavate here and write the first professional archaeological text about the island in 1969. Early in our acquaintance, Jim told me that his nickname at the Carnegie Museum is Collecto. This does not surprise me. A quick search of the museum's database reveals records for 283 things that he has donated over the years. These include books, articles, reports, diaries of Oak Bluff's people in the 1800s and 1900s, artwork, souvenirs, photographs, ephemera, dolls, and other historical objects, including a 19th century childminder used on one of the Jernigan family ships. This kid corral does not meet modern child safety standards. He has donated fossils, needlework, and last but certainly far from least, archaeological materials. But 283 is a deceptively small number because if you actually look at the records, it becomes clear that some of them refer to multiple things. A typical record might read, point, projectile, count, 52. And it's not just the things. Over the years, Jim has served on the museum's board of directors, provided guidance as the chair of the collections committee and member of committees on planning of the building and exhibitions for the new museum that will open right here. His advice and experience have been invaluable to us in the past and continue to be to this day. Personally, I am indebted to him for his help with the books that I have worked on for the museum. He has long been my reliable go-to for fact-checking, obscure research, and perspective. Always on an even keel, he will offer up the required information or the requested information along with the advice. Don't get too frazzled, and keep that glass of bourbon next to your elbow. With that, I am honored to introduce James B. Richardson, recipient of the Martha's Vineyard Medal.
Well, I think that Bonnie has sort of stolen my thunder, but I will make a few comments. The endearing term collective is something I'll always treasure for the rest of my life. It was one time when I was working with Senator Hines on a steel mill and trying to save a couple of blast furnaces, I told the director of the Carnegie Museum that, we really need to preserve this. So he turns to me and he said, if you ever dare drag one of those things to the museum, you're fired. What I want to do is just very briefly talk about sort of roots, and Bonnie has done quite a bit of this, but Art Railton in his book, The History of Martha's Vineyard, his subtitle was Where We Got to Where We Are. And if you look at my career over time, my goal when I was very, very young in elementary school was to be an archaeologist. So there were many twists and turns leading this career in archaeology, sort of serendipity, luck, seize the moment, played a big part. But one thinks about 80 some odd years as wanting to be an archaeologist and being an archaeologist. What if X, Y, and Z didn't happen? So if my mother had ever married my father, and my father's mother, Mary Lawton, hadn't had a father, William Bennett Lawton, as Bonnie indicated, and a great-grandfather, Pardon Hiscock, who in 1838, and Lindsay Lee dug this out of the Vineyard Gazette archives, was one of the founders of the campgrounds. So we've been here for about 5 generations. Secondly, what if I had been introduced to Gail Huntington, and the library's named after him and so forth. Gail was a long-term editor of the Dukes County Intelligencer, and he asked me when I was 16 years old to join him in excavations right over here next to the pumping station in Oak Bluffs. And we dug there for the whole summer. And later on, I always kept in touch with him, and I went to his house, which was right over here. And we were sitting talking, and he said, what am I going to do with all these artifacts that we dug up over in the lagoon? I said, well, you should help me load them in my car. So therefore, more collective coming to fruition. So we loaded all of this stuff in my car, took it to the Carnegie Museum, we analyzed it, we numbered it, and so forth and so on. And then I returned it all to the museum, which Bonnie had to deal with these thousands of artifacts and accession them. Now, as a high school student, one of the things that I did was, because I wanted to be an archaeologist, I wrote a letter to the Smithsonian. Can I go on one of your expeditions? You could never do this today. I got a letter back saying, report to Lincoln, Nebraska. You're going to be going on an expedition to the Big Bend of the Missouri River in South Dakota, near Chamberlain. You'll be for 3 months on the Lower Brule Sioux, Lakota Indian Reservation, formerly the Red Cloud Agency. And a lot of the crew members were, in fact, Lakota. And that was an experience that really made me know that I wanted to be an archaeologist. Now, one thing that, again, what if? What if I hadn't had a blind date when I was in St. Lawrence University and from Potsdam State University? My fraternity brother fixed me up with my wife, Judy, and we just celebrated our 56th wedding anniversary Saturday. We have 2 great children. Heather is sitting right here with her husband, Jim Sharon, and 2 grandchildren, Aiden and Alec over here. You know, when you get to my age, you finally figure out why you have children. It's to give you grandchildren.
Yeah, right.
So you can really do it on them. What if I hadn't been a crew member on the New York State Museum crew led by Bill Ritchie? We were digging Lamoka Lake in western New York. And I brought some artifacts from the lagoon site that Gail and I had excavated. And he sort of said, well, that stuff's just like we're digging up here. So he said, well, let's go, we'll do a survey. Harry Hornblower, a lot of us dig on his property, the Jackie Onassis property now. So he came down. He spent 4 seasons here on East Chop, actually, in a rented house there. And so from that came his book, 1967, The Archaeology of Martha's Vineyard. One of the things he asked me when I said, you've got to come to the vineyard, was, are there any fish there? I said, Bill, the place is surrounded by water. And now, the only other, and just to finish up, what if at the University of Illinois, where I was getting my doctorate, my advisor hadn't come out of the hall shouting way down to the end of the hall when he saw me. He said, Jim, do you want to go to Peru? And I yelled back, saying, yeah, if you're paying for it. So we went to Peru, and that's where I began research in Peru for the last 50-some-odd years. Now, there were many what-ifs in all of our lives, which I'll skip, but suffice it to say that the Martha's Vineyard Museum is a major reason that got us, and me in particular, to where we are. And the last milestone of what if Calvin and Pat Linneman hadn't contacted the museum about the opportunity to buy the Marine Hospital and provided the initial funding, we wouldn't be here in this beautiful spot today. So think about all of your what-ifs that led you to this Emerald Isle and this tent today where the museum is building this marvelous cultural and educational center for the island community and visitors. And thank you for your continued support for this transformation. Thanks. I think, can't you just give me the medal?
I will give you the medal, but I want to read it because it's very deserved. This medal is awarded to you, James B. Richardson III, in recognition of his commitment to preserving island history, art, and culture. So again, thank you for all you've done, not just for us here, but for everyone worldwide. It's extraordinary. Keep it up.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We good?
The grandsons are good.
Good. Notice that the grandson went up, not the kid. Okay, just noting, just noting. You got dissed, yeah, right? Oh, thank you, Jim. Chris Scott, would you please come up, and Bob Cox. Our third recipient is Chris Scott, who truthfully, I wish had stayed on with the preservation. Oh, what, is this a game of chicken here?
Yeah,
what do we
right.
got? All right. I'm going to turn it over to you, Bob. I look forward, Chris, to getting to know you more. I know it was just a brief couple of months before I took the helm and you departed, but I truly admire what you did at the Preservation Trust and look forward to continued dialogue and learning. So, Bob.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be able to introduce and award this medal to the recently departed Chris Scott. 25 years ago, a younger, probably taller, with definitely more hair, Chris Scott moved with his wife, Pam, to head the Martha's Vineyard Preservation Trust. Our good fortune. Chris is a landscape artist and urban designer by training and worked in Boston for 15 years with the Department of Environmental Management, building new state parks, preserving public historic landscapes along the Commonwealth. He brought to the Trust extensive experience in historic preservation and a serious commitment to the restoration of living institutions to their rightful place in island life. During his 25-year tenure as executive director and president, from 1992 to 2017, the number of trust holdings expanded from 7 historic properties to 25. These included many high-profile key acquisitions, which include Alley's General Store, the Grange Hall in West Tisbury, the Old Sculpin Gallery and the Norton Boathouse in Edgartown, Slipaway Farm on Chappie, the Union Chapel and Flying Horses in Oak Bluffs, and many, many others. Many of the properties that have come under the ownership of the trust were, at the time, quite deteriorated, and in some cases threatened with demolition. Perfect for the trust's mission and for Chris's expertise. Under his leadership, the trust has been entrusted, I kind of like that, trust has been, by the town of Edgartown with ownership of the Carnegie Library, which is on North Water Street. Thanks to Chris, his reputation, his vision, and leadership, this is one of the most exciting projects that the trust has ever undertaken. He has led a fundraising effort that approaches $2 million, which will be used to transform this historic structure into one of the most high-profile properties that the trust has undertaken. We expect it to open for the public in the Christmas season this year. During his tenure, dozens of community partnerships were created at Trust Landmarks, which have become island institutions. Some examples include the Farmers Market and the Artisans Festival at the Grange Hall, the Farmers of Slipaway Farm on Chappie, the Island Community Chorus, the Many Singers, the Martha's Vineyard Chamber Music Society at the Old Whaling Church. In addition to his work at the Trust, Chris has played an active volunteer role in many other aspects of vineyard community life. These include treasurer of the Striped Bass and Blue Chip Derby. Bluefish Derby. Did I say
Chip?
Chip?
It's like fish chip.
A little slip there of the slip of the lip. He is an avid boater and fisherman, although I will say that his strengths have been proven more to be on the financial side than on the actual catching of fish side, or at least any derby prize-winning fish. But to be fair, he has had some modest successes, and being a half-full kind of guy, half-full glass kind of guy, glass half-full kind of guy, I'm going to get this, glass half-full kind of guy, he is ever the optimist, and we have to admire him for that. He's the vice president of the Vineyard Youth Tennis. Now, this is a success story of which the whole island can be proud. His daughter, Victoria, is a two-time state doubles champion, a member of the three-time Division III state champion girls tennis team, and USTA 18 Level 6 New England singles champion. Chris says these days he's known mostly around the island as Victoria Scott's dad, and he's a proud dad at that. Additional community volunteer organizations include the Flotilla Commander of the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Yes, sir.
President Emeritus of the Scottish Society of Martha's Vineyard. Since his retirement, no grass has grown under his feet. He's added additional volunteer positions. He's the chairman of the Edgartown Historical District Commission. He's a trustee of the Edgartown Public Library, and he's chairman of the Edgartown Yellow House Committee. Oh, and least I forget, his impersonation of Santa Claus that occurs every year, frightening the children while dispensing Edgartown Parade good cheer. Chris, at this point, speaking of Pam as well as you, I thought this quote quite timely and appropriate. Behind every successful man is a woman rolling her eyes. Chris, your accomplishments are many. Your leadership in island historic preservation is acknowledged and appreciated island-wide. Historic preservation, Chris Scott, he's the go-to guy. He was right for the island, and the island was right for him. You know, the thought crystallized for me when Pam told me the following. From my perspective, I would say that since moving here in 1992, Chris has been the most fulfilled, satisfied person I know, both professionally at the Trust and personally on the water, in the woods, in the fields of the vineyard. He truly loves this island, and I can't imagine Chris adding a qualifier to that at all. So he indeed was right for the island, and the island was right for him. Congratulations from all of us, Chris. Recognition, well deserved.
Well, this is the end of the program, right?
Yeah, you got
Okay.
it. Fireworks.
So I'm keenly aware that I'm all that stands between you and an open bar, which is a perilous place to be, so I'll be brief. Thank you so much for that glowing introduction. You know, I did most of that on company time. So, you know, the thing that I am really proud of was that was that we added so many properties to the Preservation Trust while I was there. And there was almost one more. It could have been this one. And I'll tell you a story that I don't know if any of you know, but about 18 years ago, Ron Rappaport called me and said, St. Pierre family has this big building on a hill, and would you like to take a look at it? Maybe the trust would be interested. And I'll be honest with you, I don't scare easy. That scared me. It really, truly did. And we've looked at a lot of properties that we haven't gotten involved with, and this was one of them. I could not, at the time, think that the trust could take it on and be a success with whatever. Usually I had an idea of what a property could turn into, but I'm so delighted that you, as an organization, have had the courage and the vision and the money and the wherewithal to transform this into what's going to be a fantastic museum for the island. If you go into the New Bedford Whaling Museum, the first thing you see is a big skeleton of a whale. If you go into the Nantucket Whaling Museum, the first thing you see is a big skeleton of a whale. So I am delighted to hear that if you come into the Martha's Vineyard Museum, the first thing you're going to see is a giant prehistoric Jaws. I got it. That's smart. That's smart.
We're up in the air,
and
man.
people will, that's right. That's right. So my hat's off to you. A few days ago, the trust just coincidentally honored me also by naming a garden next to the Fisher House after me. So this is a little bit like being at my own wake for a week. But I want to thank you very, very sincerely for this honor. When Phil mentioned it to me, I was extremely touched, and it does mean a lot to me. And I congratulate you again for everything you're doing here and for the island. Thank you.
Chris, in true spirit of sort of fun, joy, and celebration, and one step away from enjoying a little glass of something with you, this is in recognition of your commitment to preserving island history, art, and culture forevermore. Thank you. Okay, thank you all for coming. We are now going to adjourn. Madam, do we need to have a vote of adjournment?
Well, no, I was going to say, somebody needs
Someone make a motion to adjourn? Seconded? All in favor? Onward to the reception. Thank you all. Good, Stever.
Thank you.
Very valuable.
Yeah,
I don't know where mine went. I had one and it's
really.
gone.
Because I always have to.
I do too.